holding out for something golden. Found a light on a hill. I was waking up, looking for peace in a world that's divided. Gotta hold on tight when you find it. I was turning around, I was waking up. You're pulling me right in, rotate to you again. I'll live the rest of my life by your side. I wanna stay here forever, playing it on like the radio. Don't see how it could be better. All I know is don't let go. Stuck in a head rush about it. We're spinning fast, we're moving slow. I don't know how, but we found it. Something supernatural. The space between us, it feels like home. You feel like home wherever we go. The space between us is a place to rest your bones. It feels like home, supernatural. One look in your eyes and I find it. When you leave in my mind I rewind it. When you got it this good, you don't fight it. When you're with me, nothing else matters. On gray days, I live in your laughter. I collide with your heart, I'm seeing stars. I let go of the past, I know this too shall last. Now I've been waiting all day to let you know that I wanna stay here forever, playing it on like the radio. Don't see how it could be better. All I know is don't let go. Stuck in a head rush about it. We're spinning fast, we're moving slow. I don't know how, but we found it. Something supernatural. The space between us, it feels like home. You feel like home wherever we go. The space between us is a place to rest your bones. It feels like home, supernatural. I wanna stay here forever, playing it on like the radio. Don't see how it could be better. All I know is don't let go. Stuck in a head rush about it. We're spinning fast, we're moving slow. I don't know how, but we found it. Something supernatural. The space between us, it feels like home. You feel like home wherever we go. The space between us is a place to rest your bones. This feels like home, supernatural. Tonight I'm flying over that little house up on the hill. My mind is resting on the wooden pane of your windowsill. I am your nightingale, singing for all we have lost. We lost ourselves, but we're coming home tonight, like a phoenix in the fire. I wish they could see us now, 'cause dying stars all get reborn, put together somehow, rebuilding us after the storm. wishing for you. I didn't know it'd be like that you would notice me like that. Begging for right to wait, will you sit to silence, crashing into the deep end, falling, feeling fire in the daylight, keep you up all through the night, no control when you don't mind, we were counting on weekdays. Time with you has a halo. Nights are losing all the taste, all of the taste. Way up here looking at you. Never coming down, down. Waiting for right to wait. Listen to silence, crashing into the deep end, falling, feeling fire in the daylight, keep you up all through the night, no control when you don't mind, falling, falling, all in, captivate me, falling, all in, falling, captivate me, falling, falling, I'm all in, and we're falling, falling, all in, oh. We're flying high like a jet stream. See it in your eyes that you feel me. Never wanna come down to the ground. Setting sparks to fires when you're with me. And I realize what it all means when our hearts beat loud to the beat. There's a song in my head, wanna play it again. Soundtrack to the best days we ever had. You're the one on my heart, erasing all my scars. Oh, I love you so bad. I am better than I've been whenever you're around.
Good evening. Welcome to Speak Honestly. My name is Patrick Regan.
Hi, and I'm Jess.
It is so brilliant to be with you this evening on Sunday night. Thank you so much for joining in. This is our last session on perfectionism. Thank you for all those that donated. I've been mentioning that we've had so many events cancelled that actually income for charities like ours has been really, really tough. So we really, really appreciate you tuning in tonight and donating in the process as well. It really, really do appreciate it. So Jess, tell us what we've got coming up on tonight's show.
So tonight we're going to be talking about perfectionism.
It's going to be perfect, right?
It's going to be perfect.
Perfect.
I can tell you now it's probably not going to be, but that's the point. That's the point. We're going to have live Q&A from the YouTube chat, so please use that to let us know where you're watching from, because we'd love to know. It's so lovely to see where people are tuning in from and to hear your thoughts. So please use the YouTube chat. But we've also got a special guest, Will Vanderhart, which is a good friend of yours, Patrick. And we're going to be hearing from him all about perfectionism. And he's going to give us some incredible insights. I can't wait for that. We've also got some videos and some poetry at the end, which I'm very excited about. So, and we've also got a competition, haven't we, Patrick?
We have.
Woohoo!
It is the last opportunity for Merch of the Week. The jingle is getting worse and worse every single week. I'm really sorry about that. But our jingle and our one studio audience is Joel Harris. He's been drinking a little bit too much Red Bull, and so we apologise for that. But what can you do? You can't get the staff, really, can you, Jess?
No,
It's
I mean,
really...
we're making do with what we've got, isn't it? I think it's...
And you know what? The whole thing about perfectionism is there is a sense that perfectionism is like a moving target.
Yeah.
You can never hit it.
No.
Which is a pretty good job, really. But I guess I've started to realise that perfectionism and trying your best are two really, really different things.
Absolutely.
And I think that we live in a culture, actually, that is like look perfect, sound perfect, have the perfect Instagram post. I mean, Joel tries to do that all the time, but fails miserably. But you know, it's that sense, isn't it? Like, and then you're worth something.
Yeah, and that's where your value can come from. But it's unrealistic. We can set ourselves unrealistic expectations, and then we feel disappointed when we don't hit them. But that's perfectionism for you. And actually, we live in an imperfect world. And we weren't designed to be perfect. None of us were. You know, that's the whole point of kintsugi, is to celebrate the stuff that makes us unique. Go on.
Well, I just think heading up to Christmas as
Yeah.
well, and I think, you know, at Christmas normally there's more arguments, more family issues, because we've got to have the perfect Christmas, right? And I guess there's so much hype towards this one day, and then the reality is, for a lot of people, it ends up being really disappointing because we've just got these really, I guess it's like rigid goals, unrealistic expectations. And I think for people who struggle with perfectionism, and I'm definitely one of them, is I realise that it's because sometimes you know, of your shame, or you don't think you're worthy, so you work harder. But I think the thing about perfectionism is it can lead to anxiety, which can then lead to depression. And so I always see it as like shame, that sense of, you know, I'm wrong. Not that I've done something wrong, that I'm wrong, there's something wrong with me, so I'm going to work really, really hard to prove that I'm lovable and I'm good and I'm this. So then you get into perfectionism, which then actually results in an anxiety.
It's just like
really
a
tough place.
spiral, isn't it? And you end up in this really dark, lonely place.
Absolutely.
It's really interesting. It's that whole thing of comparison as well. It's like Christmas. You compare your Christmases with other people's, or you aim, and it's that whole thing of like the white Christmas. I don't think I've ever had a white Christmas, but you have that image of in your head of that's the perfect thing at Christmas time.
Yeah.
It's very
Perfect
for it to
families,
snow.
all that stuff.
All of that stuff.
So what we're going to do is we are going to go to a video now that looks at what perfectionism is all about. Check this out. Perfectionism is unrelented standards. Just try harder, do better. It means you can't celebrate your successes.
Perfectionism is not starting something because you are worried it won't be good enough.
Perfectionism is trying to reach goals that are not attainable.
Perfectionism is the mask that we wear when we are trying to project an image of who we are or who we think we want other people to see us. And in fact, it just stops us from actually being truly seen and feeling like we belong.
Perfectionism feels like never being good enough and always being disappointed with yourself.
It's feeling the pressure to always meet my own self-imposed, often unattainably high standards, and those I imagine everyone else has too. This pressure can make me feel on edge, not fully present in the moment, and inadequate and unworthy.
Perfectionism is never being happy with who you are and what you do. It is pursuing a life of happiness, but only noticing flaws and imperfection, root of much unhappiness for the perfectionist.
Now, talking about perfectionism, yes,
We realised that we did the lovely jingle for Much of the Month, but
and
didn't,
then ignored the competition whatsoever.
didn't give you the opportunity to win Much of the Month or what Much of the Week.
Much of the
Much
week!
of the Week. Much of the Week.
Get it
Anyway, get to the point. Much of the Week. So this Much of the Week is no, Patrick, it's not.
I'm really sorry. It's all got pear shape. Perfectionism.
This Much of the Week, these pendants are individually handmade by our beautiful friend Catherine Price, who is just so talented. They are, you can get different colours. So this one's kind of like a purpley colour. This one's a black and gold one, and they are individually handmade. So you can win one of these pendants. You can give it away or keep it. It's up to you. To win one of these, you have to be the first person in the YouTube chat to enter the month and the year that Kintsugi Hope was founded. Dun dun dun. On your marks, get set, go.
Google it.
Google it. And Joel will announce our winner later, won't you,
Yeah,
Joel?
and you will. They are beautiful, handcraft,
They
unique,
are
like
beautiful.
you. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to wander over to the sofa. Here's my little walk across the studio. Yeah, I'm really excited. I think last week I nearly went on the arm there, but that's okay.
That walk's getting better and better.
Do you think?
Yeah.
It's pretty good. Well, Joel, thank you for being with us.
Once
And
again,
I know
my
you had no
privilege.
choice.
No
but,
choice. It's my job. It's either this or being fired.
Yeah.
So here we are.
Which is tempting at times, I'm not going to lie. But, you know, how do you feel like the mentoring relationship between us? Do you think that's perfect, or do you think
I
there's room
think
for
it's
improvement?
far from perfect, to be honest.
Really?
I
really?
think
Your attitude?
no. I think it's when you have
Your haircut?
when you have when you
Your
have
dress sense?
when you have leaders who are broken, it's hard then for the mental to be fixed because the person who's leading them isn't there fully yet. So I think it's actually on you.
Yeah, but don't you think that the whole idea of brokenness is actually getting in touch with your humanity?
Right, sharp. Right, moving on to what we're talking about today.
So do you think telling your boss to shut up is a really appropriate thing for Week on Perfectionism?
I think it is. So, since before coming to Kintsugi Hope, I thought perfectionism was people who wanted to get A star in school and academic success.
Yeah.
So I remember actually when we were looking at material, I was like to Diane, nah, I'm not a perfectionist. Like, I don't want an A star. Like, I'm chill with that. And she was like, why don't you just take the test? Like, why don't you have a look? And I took it, and I think I got like 2/3 out of it. I was like, oh, maybe I am a perfectionist. Because it's not just about academic success, is it? It can be a whole range of things.
Yeah, I think perfectionism's on a continuum, and you know, I say in my TED talk, it was the same for me in the sense that my parents never put pressure on me to be academic, even though I wanted to be better than I was in some ways, and but it was a sense that this striving, you know, Anne Wilson says that perfectionism is self-abuse of the highest order. Is that sense of putting yourself under unrelenting pressure the whole time to match up. And I think particularly with young people, it's an issue, isn't it? Because, you know, we were talking, me and Jess, earlier about the perfect world, the perfect Instagram posts. There's a real pressure on people.
Yeah, definitely. We look in this Instagram age where you can filter, you can take 100 photos, you choose the best one, you can face tune it so you can actually make your body look differently to how it is to have this perfect photo. Yeah. And then you have this feed of these perfect photos and you're sitting there in your joggers like eating chocolate, watching a movie, and you're like, this is not me, I'm definitely not perfect. And you're far from that, and actually you can feel disheartened because you're not reaching that level of perfection what isn't true. But there's a theme, there's a motto we have a lot in our charity, in our team, and it's don't let perfect be the enemy of good. And actually, I think when you hear that, that's really cool. But when you put that into practice, and we speak about this a lot, actually, it's really empowering and really freeing when you put it into practice.
Yeah. And I know for you, in terms of your life and your sort of trying to get your value through how many like following the perfect scenario and identity, because seriously, it is all an act. But actually, the thing that I've seen you grow in, it actually is realizing that you are valuable, not just because of what you do, but because of who you are.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a realization that striving in your work or striving in any earthly success or earthly value never actually builds up your identity into a sustainable way where you can live from it. And it's
Where
actually,
do you think that leads you to, though? Because I remember you were saying that it was leading you down a path where actually it was getting really unhealthy.
yeah, it leads you down a path where there's never enough. You never have enough likes. You never have enough people wanting to hang out with you. There's never enough. You want more. You want more. You want more. So you actually leave yourself in this space where you're feeling all the time needing more. And you're never content. So actually, it led me, especially down to a hole of depression because I was never content. I couldn't find joy. I couldn't find happiness in anything because I was just wanting more. I was wanting to have this perfect lifestyle, and because I couldn't get that, I was just wanting more and more every day.
Yeah, that's pretty tough. And obviously, we're filming this in a church, live church in Chelmsford, and we're filming it pre-lockdown because of all the complications. We weren't allowed in here after the 2nd November. But the key thing sometimes with people of faith, they're sort of seen as do-gooders and quite judgmental, that we've got these standards that we need to live by. And that's really challenging, isn't it? That's really challenging when people think that. Why do people think that?
I think it's because a lot of the time in this circle, in this being Christians, a lot of the time we want to strive to be the best because we have this Saviour, who's Jesus, who is perfect. And we're told as we live in this church to be more like Jesus. What is a very good thing, very biblical thing. But sometimes we can forget the grace in that. Actually, we're not perfect. We're never going to reach that level. And sometimes we can think God won't love us unless we're perfect, unless we're doing good, unless we're always being right. Well, actually, when we look at what the Bible says, it's God loves you no matter what your actions are. Actually, his love isn't valued on what you do, but valued on what he's done. So this idea that Christians have to be perfect isn't an idea that actually comes from any truth. And actually, if you look at who Jesus hung out with, he didn't hang out with perfect people.
It's a good job for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's incredible for me. I'm very happy. And for you especially. He hung out with people who had it all together, who could preach well, for example. He hung out with people like us who can't preach that well. And yeah, it's really good that we have a saviour. We have people who actually, it doesn't really matter how well we do, we're accepted no matter what.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to go to an amazing interview now with Will van der Hart, who is the director of Mind and Soul, good friend of mine, and me and Jess caught up with him earlier in the week. Check this out.
And we've got our very, very special guest, Will van der Hart. And I have to say, I could say many things about Will, but the thing I want to say about him is that he's my mate. And he's my mate and he's my friend. And I know that he's a man of integrity. He's the director of Mind and Soul. He's written loads of books, absolutely brilliant. I've read virtually all of them, I think, which I can't say that about many people. So we are so privileged to have him on Speak Honestly. Will, how are you doing?
Hey, mate. I'm good. It's great to be on another one of your shows. And I appreciate it. Keep slipping you those £5. You know, can I come on the next one? Appreciate it. No, mate, it's so good. It's so good. And love what you guys at Consigley Hope are doing. And yeah, it's a real privilege. What a joy.
Right.
So yeah, I'm doing all right. I mean, you know, everyone says I'm doing all right. It's a rubbish day. Goodness knows what's going on in the world. There's tons of things to feel anxious about. But yeah, muddling through and trying to be resilient and all that.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. And we're going to talk to you today about perfectionism. Look, I've even got your book here. I've been looking at it today. That's
Thanks,
how
mate.
I've been preparing.
Good.
And tell us, where do you think perfectionism comes from?
So, I mean, there's loads of different potential routes of perfectionism, but I reckon that the most kind of obvious route for where perfectionism comes into our lives is something called guilt induction parenting. So this is maybe when we've been parented, you know, without intention. You know, it's often these things are kind of accidental, but we've been parented in a way which has given us a greater sense of responsibility than is normal for a child. So, for example, we might have had a parent who was depressed, And as the child, you believe that you're responsible for that. So you kind of, you take over responsibility, or maybe a parent says to you, please be quiet because you're upsetting mummy. And so you correlate your activity with upsetting this person. So normally people who struggle with perfectionism, in a way, they're walking on emotional eggshells, and they're trying to perform to an unmeetable standard, often for the sake of other people. People often parody perfectionism about people who get stuff right all the time. Just because you get stuff right all the time doesn't actually make you a perfectionist. What's important about perfectionism is actually what's going on inside you. And the key question is, how important is it for you to get stuff right, or to kind of be seen to be perfect? And most people who the real perfectionism, it comes from this root of needing to be perceived to be at least in the right. And not being in the right could mean a lot of different things to a person. So it could mean other people are going to get sick if you don't get stuff right, or other people are going to abandon you if you don't get stuff right, or the world's going to judge you if you don't get stuff right. And most of those beliefs have come about in childhood. So we've overestimated our responsibility for things that actually aren't our responsibility. And people from Christian families can actually struggle with perfectionism more, because from a very young age they're told, well, God's watching everything you do, and if you don't get stuff right, you might, like, God might not be in your life, we might go to hell even. And so the kind of bar for perfectionism amongst Christians, you could say, is higher, because there's sort of strong belief that there's going to be trouble if you don't get stuff right.
Wow, that's really fascinating. And Will, in one of your books, you quote Hewitt and Flett, and they have developed a multi-dimensional perfectionism scale. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means? Because it sounds very complex, but can you explain it in simple terms for us?
Sure. Like with mental health stuff, there's quite a lot of kind of idle stigma. Like when it's an idle stigma, it's not like aggressive stigma. It's like when people say, oh, I'm a bit OCD because I put the Coke cans all the same way around in the fridge. That doesn't make you OCD. That just makes you like interested in symmetry. Or, I'm a bit of a perfectionist because effectively that's what I say when I want other people to think I get stuff right all the time, but I'm not really activated by perfectionism. And so perfectionism has become a bit of a grey term. Like the Eskimos, how many words have they got for snow? Like 19 different words for snow, because to them, lots of snow is different. And perfectionism is a bit of a small word covering a whole lot of stuff. And so what Hewitt and Flett have done is that they've identified 3 key areas of perfectionism. And they're really about the direction of our perfectionism. Because remember, perfectionism isn't actually about whether we get everything right or wrong. It's about whether we are anxious about whether we get stuff right or wrong, to the extent where we over try. So they've said that there's 3 main sorts of perfectionism. There's something called the self-orientated perfectionist. And that person is basically constantly judging on themselves. They're like, I've got to do better. I got to improve. Other people are, judging me. I got to do better for me. So ultimately, they're their harshest critic. So Annie Wilson-Schaaf said, perfectionism is self-abuse of the highest order, which is a pretty shocking quote. But basically, what she's saying is, you could look at all sorts of issues around self-harm, or self-abuse, but actually perfectionism is the real significant one. It's like, because ultimately you're beating yourself with this stick, saying, I am not good enough. And the energy for perfectionism comes from the self and is against the self. The second sort of perfectionism they identify is the most difficult to identify, really, and it's called other-orientated perfectionism. Now, if you work with a perfectionist, you'll know what this looks like. This is the person who never celebrates your successes. They never really compliment others. They tend to take the glory for other people's successes. They criticize other people's failures, or they criticize their own failures in other people as if they're other people's failures. And that sort of management is really toxic. Actually, a lot of perfectionists end up in sales on their own, like driving up and down the M4 in a BMW M3. Sorry, no qualification on people who drive BMW M3s, but you know what I mean. They got the boot full of stuff they're going to sell, but they don't work well in teams, because ultimately their inability to accept themselves drives them to really hate on other people. And so
Yeah.
working or living with a perfectionist can actually be very toxic if they're other orientated. Effectively what they're doing, Jesus says, don't try and take out the splinter of your brother's eye before you've taken out the speck out of your own. They see the speck in their own eye magnified in everyone else's. So actually what they're doing is they're seeing what they don't like about themselves in the eyes of other people. So rather than dealing with their own speck, they just externalize their pain and then really hurt other people with that sort of punishment aggression. And then thirdly, there's what we call the socially orientated perfectionist. So this is a bit more of the stereotype of perfectionism. But you're on Instagram, you see a girl your age, looks really beautiful, maybe with special makeup and hair. And rather than saying, oh, that's a beautiful person, or like they've got nice makeup on, or they've got a nice haircut, you say, oh, compared to that person, I'm so ugly. And then I'm hating on myself because I'm saying society is judging me and I don't meet the standard. Or you're the young guy in the gym and you're looking around at all the other buff guys working out and you look at yourself and you're like, I'm puny, I'm rubbish. And actually, the judgment sounds like it's coming from the self, but the judgment is actually a collection of the externalized view of society against you. Right. So they're the three things in Hewitt and Flett's diagnosis: self-orientated, other-orientated, and socially orientated. The fact is, we'll all have a primary, but most people who are a perfectionist will have elements of all three. But the key thing is that they help us to understand where our perfectionism might come from and then how to deal with it.
Well, that's really, really interesting. I've got one last question for you. What would be the antidote to perfectionism?
The antidote to perfectionism, Patrick, is connection. It is really like perfectionism is judgment on the self that ultimately leaves the self wanting. It's like, I am not worthy to be here. All of the energy of perfectionism is about working to belong. And it's working for an identity, not from an identity. And the antidote to perfectionism is belonging. It's priori belonging. That's why me and Rob wrote the power of belonging. Because ultimately, perfectionism says, I've got to work myself into community. Ultimately, I'm never going to get there because I've got all these harsh judgments against myself. But when we live in community with others who love us unconditionally, our perfectionism is undone from the inside out. So it's like suddenly I'm disarmed because I'm not loved because of how I achieve. I'm loved just because of who I am. And this is why the gospel message is so powerful. I can do seminars on perfectionism in secular workplaces, but to a level, apart from giving people tools to kind of undo perfectionism, there's not a massive amount of things I can do to really help them, because I know that the antidote to perfectionism is the grace that God shows us in the person of Jesus Christ. So it's like God knows every single thought, every single action, every single inclination within us, and yet he still loves us absolutely. I know there's nothing that unmasks and disempowers perfectionism more than the grace and acceptance that Jesus shows us, and then mirror that out to the grace and acceptance of the community of the church and of the family. So the church is responsible here because we can propagate perfectionism. That's the great danger as church leaders that we face, is that actually we control people by holding judgment against them in order that they conform, when actually the outworking of our conformity should be our love for Jesus. So, I behave because I belong. I love because I belong. I commune because I belong. I don't work to commune. I don't work to belong. I don't conform to belong. And the great and most evil distortions of our faith, you see them in the Pharisees and Sadducees. They were that you've got to behave to belong, and actually you've got to believe to belong. But once you believed and then you belong, then you're loved, and from that place there's transformation that comes, but it's secondary to your identity being rooted in unconditional love and acceptance. And this is just the most glorious message of the Christian faith, is that I don't need to try to be loved. All I need to do is receive the love that God has for me, and then I can live. And I'd say in my own life, I've been a Christian for a long time, but even though I was a Christian, it took me a really long time to accept that God loved me like that. I came from quite a brethren background where I constantly hammered myself with guilt and shame, and was always feeling like I wasn't good enough for God, and that definitely left me working to be accepted, working for my identity, not working from my identity.
Yeah.
But when God showed
Right.
me that He loved me, like in that way, then life turns around.
Wow.
Amazing.
Mate, that's amazing.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing, Will. It's been so good to spend a very, very short time with you. And I'm sure this is a topic that we could spend hours looking into and chatting about. But Will, if more people wanted to find out about this, then I guess the best place for them to go is to find your book, which is called The Perfectionism Book, Walking the Path to Freedom. Will, where's the best place for people to get hold of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's on all good Christian retailers, and it's on less good retailers like Amazon. But you can go to our site, mindandselffoundation.org. Nothing about Steve Bezos, praying for him. So you can go to mindandselffoundation.org, and you can just check out. There's loads of free resources on there too. And obviously, we're massive friends and advocates of Kintsugi Hope. So you can find links to our stuff through their site, like you can find links to them through our site. And we just pray for you guys. Bless you, everyone who's listening today. Bless you. Stay strong, be resilient, and know that we're all in this together, and Jesus is with us in the storm. Take care, guys.
Thank you
Thanks so much, mate.
All right,
Very
cheers.
Good.
That was great. I think Will had so much wisdom there. So thanks, Will, for that. We're now going to hear from Patrick for his final 10-minute TED Talk. Last week he went a little bit over, but that's okay. This week, we're going to hear what he has to say about perfectionism.
Perfectionism. David Burns says this: perfectionists are people whose standards are high beyond reach or reason, who strain compulsively and unremittedly towards impossible goals, and who measure their own worth entirely in terms of productivity and accomplishment. I always believed that perfectionism was, those kids whose parents put too much pressure on them to do well at school. And my parents never did that, so I figured that I was cool, and it wasn't something that I needed to deal with. A few years ago, I was studying for a talk that I was doing, and I was doing this thing about perfectionism. I realized that actually I pretty much misunderstood it. I realized that perfectionism, like many things, is on a continuum, and we can move up and down that continuum at many times. Brené Brown, the famous research professor from the States, says this: perfectionism is not self-improvement. Perfectionism is, at its core, about trying to earn approval. Most perfectionists grew up being praised for achievement and performance, grades, manners, rule following, people pleasing, appearance, sports. Somewhere along the line, they adopted this dangerous and deliberating belief system. I am what I accomplish, and how well I accomplish it. Please perform perfect. Healthy striving is self-focus. How can I improve? Perfectionism is other-focused. What will they think? Perfectionism is a hustle. And I guess that's really interesting, and I can sort of see how through sport and through other things I'd really struggled with that sense of always trying to perform and always trying to make other people like me. But then I started to dig deeper and go, well, how does it actually outwork in my life? How does perfectionism reveal itself in my life? And I came up with a little bit of a list, which I found incredibly helpful. Number one was catastrophic thinking. I can find that sometimes the smallest argument with my wife Diane can be the end of the world as we know it, the end of our marriage. The kids get angry with me, or I get angry with them, and then I am actually the worst dad in the world. In fact, Daniel, my son, goes, "Dad, you're not that bad, A smallest disagreement at work, it can play a loop in your head, and I'll blow it out of proportion, and I'll go and talk to the person and confront my colleague, and they'll go, "Yeah, I'm not really sure what you're talking about, but thanks, I really appreciate your apology." Mind reading. This is linked to catastrophic thinking. I think I know what others think of me, and it's not good. And it's based on very little evidence, and is rarely positive. Unrealistic expectations. During lockdown, the most common thoughts are, "Oh my goodness, I'm a failure, I'm a terrible parent." I had to try and homeschool 4 kids, run a charity, and I was like, I've got to be able to do all these things. It's not realistic. It's not realistic for me. It's not realistic for many of us. struggling to understand the kids' homework. I struggled to teach 2 of them and run kintsugi at the same time. But instead of cutting myself some slack, I had these very unrealistic high expectations. So then that leads to this like rigid belief system. I should, I must, I ought, which constantly means we don't feel like we're measuring up. There's little flexibility in my thinking. And if I miss my self-imposed deadlines, I'd start to feel really, really bad. Perfectionists like me, we hate making mistakes because we live with these incredibly high standards. And yet, rather than seeing them as necessary steps to achievement, the mistakes eat away and leave us frustrating. It can reveal itself in overcompensating, working so hard to get everything right, pushing ourselves to the limit, excessive checking. I don't want to upset people, right? I don't want to make mistakes. I don't want to offend anyone. I want friendships that are perfect. So I will double check texts and emails. At work, I will constantly look for reassurance that my ideas are not rubbish. Decision making. I want to get it right. I am a nightmare when it comes to remote control. In fact, that my family I'll be like, come on, we're going to watch a film. And then I'll take about 20 minutes to decide what the film is. And they'll be like, Dad, honestly, just choose a film, anything. We don't care anymore, just anything. We just want to watch anything now. Receiving feedback. Perfectionists find feedback really hard to hear, whether it's positive or negative. And, sometimes you can have 10 positive comments and 1 negative comment. What's the 1 comment that you're going to think about that evening? And is it going to be the 9 positive ones that you're going to focus on and rejoice in? Or will it be the 1? Because it's really hard to celebrate achievements when you are perfectionists. People pleasing. When we're trying to have perfect relationships, we're trying to avoid saying anything that rocks the boat. I hate upsetting people. So before talking about something tricky, you rehearse the conversation in your mind. Even though that you know that actually disagreement is part of a healthy and important part of a relationship. But the problem is, if we become so focused on pleasing others, we act differently around different types of people. Now, as I run to the side of the stage to get a prop, we are looking at this very important illustration, which is going to be so helpful for all of you in your lives, is how to trap a monkey. What you do is to trap a monkey, you get a coconut, you make a hole in the coconut, you tie the coconut to a tree. And you put some food in the coconut. And then what happens is the stupid monkey comes along and it grabs the food. And it doesn't let go. Now the hunter is nearby and the hunter starts coming along. And the hunter can get the monkey. But the monkey can be free if it just lets go of what's inside the monkey trap. But it doesn't. It doesn't let go. It struggles even more. And the hunter gets the monkey. What a stupid monkey. You know, the reality is I grab hold of things that actually I need to let go of. I need to let go of what others think about me. That causes huge anxiety. I need to let go of ego, trying to impress other people. I need to let go of the inner critic. It doesn't serve me well. And I guess that one of the key things to me that I've been really grappling with is actually what is really important in life at the moment. And particularly at this season that we're in, I've come to the conclusion that living by my values is one of the most important things that I can do at the moment. William Carey says this: I am not scared of failure. I'm scared of succeeding at things that don't actually matter. We can't have the perfect life, but we can live from our values. We can't choose how life turns out, but we can choose how to respond to it. Living from our values is the most important thing. I think it's not about being perfect. It's about actually going towards contentment, regardless of our circumstances. Viktor Frankl, who many of you would have heard of, very famous, he survived a concentration camp. He said this: we who lived in the concentration camps can remember the men who walked through the huts, comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. There may be few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken away from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. You see, I think that challenging our values helps us deal with perfectionism, because it's saying actually being perfect isn't the most valuable thing. Values determine our priorities, and deep down, They're probably the measures you tell to see if your life is turning out the way you want it to. When the things that you do match, your behavior matches your values, life is usually good. You're normally satisfied and content. But when these things don't align with your personal values, that's when things start to go wrong and be a real source of unhappiness. You know, we all listen to the critical voice. How about listening to a different voice? How about listening to a voice that says, you know what, no one's perfect. All you can do is your best, particularly leading up to Christmas. Making a mistake doesn't make you a complete failure. I'm human like everyone else. It's okay not to be happy all the time. Everyone has a bad day. It's okay if some people don't like me. No one is liked by everyone. I've got 4 kids. Abigail, my daughter, she's 12 now, and she has some additional special needs. She also has an eyesight condition called nystagmus. And she gets very frustrated, and she often gets teased by others. She doesn't always understand what's going on. She can't always see properly. And sometimes she gets vision fatigue. Her behavior at the end of the day can get really, really challenging. And I remember getting her school report, and her school report was that she got A for effort in every single subject. But she'll probably, I mean, she may, but she probably won't get high GCSE grades. And but we don't value the effort, we just value the grades often. At the end of term, I used to go to these assemblies and everyone would get 100%, well not everyone obviously, but loads of the kids got 100% attendance certificates. And I always wondered, what was it like for those kids who couldn't, because they had too many hospital appointments to go to? For people like Abby, who will never get 100% attendance certificate. And I realized that maybe we have got the wrong set of values. That maybe that we have been valuing stats before people. Maybe we've been valuing achievement before kindness, charisma before character, and that we need to challenge our values again. I'm not up for being perfect anymore. In fact, this prayer by Thomas Merton, an American monk, I think is one of the most beautiful prayers, and I'll finish by reading it to you. It says this: "My Lord God, I have no idea where I'm going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end, nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think I'm actually following your will does not mean that I'm actually doing so. But I believe that my desire to please you does in fact please you. And I hope I have that desire in all that I'm doing. I hope that I will never do anything apart from that desire. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, though I may know nothing about it. Therefore, I will trust you always, though I may seem to be lost and in the shadow of death. I will not fear, for you are with me, and you'll never leave me to face my perils alone." This sums it up. My job is to make sure my heart's right. For me, as someone of faith, is making sure my heart's right before God. Success isn't the amount of work I get done in the day, isn't the amount of likes I get on social media, or the amount of money I have in the bank, which is a pretty good job. It can't be measured just on external things. For me, it's starting to realize that I have nothing to prove in order to make me lovable, as love never changes. God's love never changes. Success is looking in the mirror and trying not to change what you see. Is knowing that I need to show up. I need to show up to my thoughts, my feelings, my doubts, to be present to my family, my friends, and my colleagues, and to be authentically known. And as we're authentically known, then we start dealing with those issues of the inner critic and perfectionism. God bless you.
Okay, now we've got a really great video to show you all about the inner critic. We're going to chat a little bit more about that after the video, but it's just really fascinating to see what we say about ourselves and the power that that has.
Okay, so I've been thinking a lot about how we're so freaking cruel to ourselves. If my house is super messy, I'll be like, oh my gosh, you suck because you can't even keep a house clean. And I also was thinking about how the stuff I say to myself, like the hateful, mean stuff, I would never say to somebody else. I would never walk into your house when it's messy and say that. In fact, I wouldn't even think it. I feel like this is something that everybody does. Do you do that?
Always.
What are some things that you say to yourself?
Things that I probably beat myself up about more than anything else. Why didn't you clean the kitchen? If I cleaned the kitchen, why didn't I do the floor? Why didn't I, what a pig, what a mess.
Have you seen my kitchen today? If anyone's a pig, Mary.
It looks like somebody lives here.
What are some things that you say to yourself now?
You're an exaggerating, selfish liar.
Wow, that's harsh.
And to be honest, if I weigh it against the truth, it's not.
But you still say it to yourself.
I say,
you're never gonna lose the weight. I know that's not true, but the more you tell yourself that, the more you sort of believe it, and then you don't make that change when you probably could and should.
I tell myself almost on a weekly basis, if not daily, I'm just not a good enough mother for my kids.
But when you break it down, can you actually think of specifics in a way you're failing them?
No.
But I know, but we all do this. Like we all have our own versions of it.
Yeah.
Holy crap. That is so mean.
Yeah.
Like we're so cruel to ourselves.
And you're right. I would never ever say that to anybody else.
Yeah.
So why would I say it to myself?
The stuff you were saying that you say to yourself the most, I want you to say it to this girl. Look at this girl.
oh, that's so sad. She's cute. What happened?
I want you to say it to this girl.
Oh. Oh.
Oh my God.
Can you tell this girl that she's a pig and she's lazy?
No, I really can't.
She looks happy. I don't want to crush her spirit.
You're saying it to this girl.
Yeah.
You're literally saying it to this girl every day. Is it hard to say it to this like adorable little cute innocent girl?
It is, especially when that when that picture reminds me of my daughter.
What do you think that girl needs to hear? How would you encourage her?
To just do your best. Just love.
What would you want to say to yourself instead?
You're enough. You're good.
I would encourage her. I would say, you can do it.
You're a good girl, and you do love people, and you're working every day to get better. And I can't look at her anymore because that's a great exercise.
Well, where's your picture?
Yeah, where's my picture? I would tell this girl, wow. I would say your opinion matters, your talents matter, you're not inadequate. You don't have to change who you are in order for people to like you. I mean, obviously I knew I was going to talk to you, I knew I was going to show you the picture, but I actually hadn't looked at my own picture to do this.
It's pretty powerful, isn't it?
It's so like heart-wrenching because we're still that same person and a younger self. If we wouldn't say it to our best, closest friend, why? Like, why are we saying these mean things?
Because I forgot who she was. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
This makes me want to put this picture up somewhere.
As a reminder.
Yeah, and so when I start at the end of a long day beating myself up, you know, if I'm standing in front of the mirror and going, oh, this and that, maybe immediately look at that girl and try to say it. And I don't think I could. I really don't think I could.
She's cute.
She's so cute. And so are you.
Thank you.
So cute.
She needs a hug.
She does. She needs a lot of hugs.
You know, in my Kintsugi group, you know that Kintsugi, we run these Kintsugi wellbeing groups all across the country. There's hundreds of people in them. And it's just an amazing opportunity to learn self-management tools, to come together, get peer support. Most of them are happening on Zoom at the moment. And we train churches up to run them. And so if your church isn't running one, please get in touch with us. We would love to be able to talk to you about running a Kintsugi wellbeing group in your community. Now, one of the Kintsugi wellbeing topics is self-acceptance. And in my group on week 8, we showed the video that you've just watched. And I remember there watching it, and, you know, and a lot of people react in different ways to that video. Some people get quite emotional. I watched it, went, yeah, bit girly. And American. Nothing wrong with America and nothing wrong with girls. And, you know, basically, but I guess that was my sort of attitude at the time. And I thought, yeah, I can't really relate. The next day, I was at my parents' house and I was going up the landing and I saw this picture of myself looking back. And it was me, I must have been 4 or 5. And something inside me actually snapped because I know that the inner critic is something I've been so critical of myself. And I would talk to myself the way I wouldn't dream of talking to anyone else. And so it's been a really, really tough dealing with that and going on to that. So what we thought we'd do tonight is something a little bit scary, a little bit vulnerable for all 3 of us, is that we've all got a pen and we've got a paper, and we're going to set ourselves a challenge of writing down what our inner critic says to us. And then see how true the rest of us, as 3 people that know each other pretty well now, worked together for a while, is it true? So you guys, you got a laptop, yeah, because you want to do perfect, right? And me and Jess are going old-fashioned pen and paper. Now, what we'd love you to do is, again, this is trying to be a safe and supportive space, and we're trying, obviously, do an exercise here that will hopefully help you in the long run. If you feel comfortable, you can do this at home while you're watching this as well, is grab a bit of paper, grab a pen, or do it on your iPhone. If you want to do it on your laptop like Joel's doing, that's fine as well. But really just write down what your inner critic often says to you, and just do what the first thing that comes into your head. Don't have to think about it too much. All right, so this feels a little bit weird. I have no idea what you guys have written. Who wants to go first?
I will.
All right, Joel.
Cool.
Your inner critic, what's the one thing it says to you the most?
Yeah. You'll never be good enough. They all think you're terrible. That's what my inner critic says.
There's an element of truth.
That's
No,
so
I'm joking.
I was wondering if you're allowed to make jokes or not in this part, but
Yeah.
you started it.
I'm sorry.
Oh, that makes me so sad.
Bless you.
Say it again.
You'll never be good enough. They all think you're terrible.
That's what you really think sometimes.
Yeah.
Wow.
And who's
they?
all? Yeah.
There's no like one person. It's just I think it's just everyone. I always have this thing when I ever go into these places, like, oh, they all think you're terrible. And it's just that set thing.
Whereas, obviously, it's not obviously at all. But the truth is, why would you say that to yourself in the sense that everyone I know thinks that you're amazing? Like, I mean, you are like, thinks you're incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it probably stems from just like primary school age and high school age and all that background of bullying and stuff, probably. Just stems from that sense of me getting to that place where actually people did think you're terrible. So then it's ingrained in you that people think that. That's probably where it stems from, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Is it my turn? Well, I wrote 4. I got a bit carried away.
Your inner critic's been busy.
It's been very busy. Basically, if I like summed them all up though, because I could have carried on going, but it's all you're not blank enough. Like, basically, you're not enough.
Yeah.
In total, like you're not clever enough, you're not qualified enough, you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not any of those things. So it's like you've just like you're below. Do you know what I mean? Like you're below average, which is yeah.
Well, sounds really ridiculous in the sense of when us working together, you kind of are the glue that hold most people together. In the sense, I look to you to figure out what I'm doing, kind of thing.
Oh, thanks,
so
John.
you're
That's very kind.
not only are you good enough for your job, but you seem to be good enough for our jobs as well.
It's weird, isn't it? When you say it out loud, you realise how like awful it is. Do you know what I mean? Like when you say it out loud, you're like, oh. That's really sad that I think that about myself. And then you're like, you almost realise that it's not true when you say it out loud, but then you like still think that. It's weird, isn't it? In those like darkest times, that's what you say about yourself.
Where do you think it comes from?
I think there is a little bit in the last Speak Honestly, we spoke a little bit about my like journey with like what I studied for isn't necessarily what I'm doing now. So there's that whole kind of like if I want to be good at my job now, then I need to like restudy. Do you know what I mean? Need to have like letters next to my name. I need to have like a degree to prove that I've like earned my place. Do you know what I mean? So it's that whole thing about what you were saying, Joel, like academic success. And yeah, I know that's not true, but there's a certain it's the value system that the world works in, isn't it? It's like, you know, what letters have you got next to your name, or have you been to uni, or have you done this, or what grades did you get? So I guess there's that kind of, I feel like I haven't made it yet because that's lacking. Yeah, and then I guess like just society's opinion of what like a good person is, and what a good like woman is, and what a good wife is. You always feel like you're failing because society's got its own standards. But then you're like, who sets those standards anyway? Like, surely we can redefine what that looks like.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Patrick,
your turn.
My turn. I just mine's exactly the same as all three of you, which is a little bit worrying, really. It just says, my inner critic says you're not good enough, and try harder.
What's quite mad when we think about it, for two things. One, you're not good enough. If we look at what you've done in your career, it feels like very much so that you're more than good enough, and more than qualified, and more than have the right attributes to do what you do. And then work harder. I'm not sure if you guys know, because we're going back into lockdown. Today's Sunday. Patrick actually spent the whole day rewriting most of these talks to make sure it fits to what actually is going on in the world. So I think you couldn't work hard if you wanted to. Like, I would say you're one of the most hardworking people I know.
It's weird. I think it is really weird. Like Jess says, that when I don't know how you're finding it at home, but if you've had the courage to do it, when you say it out loud, it does feel weird. And it's really good to ask yourself, why am I feeling that? You know, and I feel like, you know, I talk about the 3 C's, about dealing with, I don't know, perfectionism and anxiety and a lot of things. That courage to be vulnerable, courage to be yourself, courage to show up, courage to allow others closer to you, is so important. Curiosity, you know, don't believe everything you think. That's so important, isn't it? That because we all think things that the rest of us would say are not true about ourselves.
Yeah, and we're told curiosity is like bad thing. There's that saying, is that curiosity killed the cat.
Yeah.
So, well, I don't want to die. So.
It's almost like healthy doubt is really important.
Absolutely.
You know, we've been taught that doubt is bad. But actually, maybe doubt those absolute statements, and maybe doubt a healthy doubt. You know, I actually think certain people are frightening. You know, I've often said that the people that flew the planes into the Twin Towers were certain they were doing it for God. They were certain they were doing the right thing, and they destroyed thousands and thousands and thousands of lives. Certain people are scary, that actually sometimes that faith and doubt can coexist, and I think is important. And then the third C, I'd say, is compassion, and we've talked lots about it in Kintsugi Hope, that self-compassion. You know, what do you need to hear? What do you think Joel needs to hear? What do I need to hear? And maybe, you know, we can say that stuff over each other because we're a close team, and, you know, the rest of the Kintsugi guys as well, who aren't here this evening. But it's like, that's good. I'm glad we could do that. You know, I want you guys to live in a culture and an environment where you feel build up every day. You felt built up. But there's a sense we've got to say it over ourselves as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key, isn't it, when we're dealing with this issue of perfectionism, is actually going, you know, if our best is good enough for God, why is our best not good enough for us?
Yeah.
And that's part of the challenge, I think, we're dealing with some of this stuff that we've been talking about tonight. So, guys, I really hope this has been helpful. We've absolutely loved doing the Speak Honestly online chat show with you. Thank you so much for being with us this whole time. Thank you so much, particularly to our tech team as well. Behind the cameras, Matt and Lauren and Alex mixing it all at the back there. And thank you so much. We really do appreciate these guys do so much. And we'll be cleaning as well a lot here now. Thank you to Life Church Chelmsford for having us. Please stay in touch. And again, we would love to be able to keep building a relationship. Maybe we'll do this again sometime. We don't know yet. I guess none of us quite know what the future's going to hold. Again, if you want to support Kintsugi Hope, £5 or £10 a month, then we send our books free as a thank you. So Honesty Over Silence, When Faith Gets Shaken, and the journal, just as a massive thank you, because at the moment we've had to cancel all our events and we want to support more people with their emotional mental health. So if you do want to support us, please go to the website. There's a give, donate button there, email us, and we'll make sure that you get the books as well. And so thank you so much. And we're going to finish. Jess is going to read something which is really helpful in looking at this whole area of perfectionism.
Yeah, it's called The 10 Rules for a Stress-Free Life, which sounds pretty good to me. So yeah, as I read it, just listen to the words. Thou shalt not be perfect, nor even try to be. Thou shalt not try and be all things to all people. Thou shalt leave undone things that ought to be done. Thou shalt learn to say no. Thou shalt schedule time for thyself and thy supportive network. Thou shalt switch off and do nothing regularly. Thou shalt be boring, untidy, inelegant, and unattractive at times. Thou shalt not feel guilty. Especially, thou shalt not be thine own worst enemy, but be thy best friend. Thanks for joining us on Speak Honestly, and we hopefully will see you soon.
And there you go. It is done. 3 weeks, 3 chat shows. We finished. It's the last one. Thank you guys so much. If you've watched all 3, you've just watched tonight, we really do hope these have been helpful. You've learned some stuff. It's been a safe space for us to have honest conversations. I hope you've enjoyed the chat. We've loved interacting with you guys on the chat. It's been amazing. I feel like there's been some incredible conversations going on screen and on the chat. But yeah, we're so thankful. We really do hope these have been amazing. And if you have loved this and you're wanting to keep in touch with us and you're wanting to learn about a few more events, we've got a few coming up, what Jess is going to tell us about.
Yeah, so we have one coming up this coming week on the 17th of November, which is all around tackling youth and mental health, which is going to be hosted by Joel, and we're going to have leading experts from the youth mental health world, as well as Patrick Regan will also be there, but we've got some really incredible speakers that are going to share about how we together can prioritise young people and their mental well-being and their mental health. So if you're a parent, if you're a young person or a teacher, then come along to that. It's going to be really good. We've also got some Christmas things happening, which is very exciting. Can hear those jingle bells. We've got a Hope Stories, which is stories of hope. And Patrick Regan's going to be sharing from his time in ministry and time working in charity work in the city, but also in other countries across the globe, about some people that he's met that have just inspired him, that have found the light in the darkness, in the most incredibly dark situations, but they have found hope and they have inspired hope. So we're going to be hearing about some of that. And I think at this time where we're all in lockdown, the rain is pouring in lots of areas and the nights are very long. We all need a little bit of hope at the moment, or maybe a whole bunch of hope. So that evening is all about bringing hope into our homes. And then lastly, but not leastly, we have a Christmas quiz, which is going to be so much fun. It's going to be hosted by Joel and I, and we've got just such a fun-filled evening, and that is on the 7th of December. And that's just going to be such a fun evening, and there's prizes, and of course it's probably going to get a little bit competitive, but what's the point in a quiz if it doesn't get competitive? The last lockdown, I feel like, was hallmarked by quizzes on Zoom, so it wouldn't be a proper lockdown if we didn't have quizzes on Zoom. So let's get together. You can play with people in your household, or maybe people in a different household to you, if we're allowed to, but we'll see. And we've also got some other Christmassy things, haven't we, Joel?
Yes, we do. I'm not sure about you, but Christmas is around the corner. I'm terrible at presents. I never know what to get my relatives. You know, like your grandma, your aunts, like, what do I get them? I feel like I never know. And I get to Christmas Eve, I'm going to look around the house for anything that I forgot last year to give to them. But this year, to save that stress, we've actually got 2 incredible gifts you can buy to give to your loved ones. One of them is a Christmas bauble, what you put in your tree. It looks very fancy, it's very nice. And the other one is a Christmas card, just a very simple Christmas card going, hope wins. Let's give a bit of hope in the darkness this Christmas. So there are 2 things you can find them on the Consugi Hope shop, what you can get, and you can avoid the stress of not knowing what to give your relatives this Christmas.
Absolutely. And some people in the chat this evening have been speaking about their wellbeing groups, and some of you might be familiar with that term, and some of you might be thinking, what are these groups that they keep going on about? Well, I'm just going to give you a 2-minute round the trip of what a wellbeing group is. So this is the main thing that Kintsugi Hope do, wellbeing groups, and we've got churches and Christian charities all over the country running wellbeing groups, and they go on for 12 weeks, and each different week looks at a different theme of well-being. So perfectionism is one of those, anxiety, depression, shame, guilt, forgiveness, you name it, we look at it. It's such a great all-rounder for looking at and prioritizing your well-being. And the main way we do that is through partnering with churches. So if you're from a church and you think that your church would love to run these groups, maybe your church is looking at more ways that they can prioritize and create safe and supportive spaces for people to be vulnerable and open, like we have this evening, then please do get in contact with us at groups@kintsugihope.com. You can go to our website, we've got loads of information on there. But we would love to start a conversation with you as to how we can partner with you or partner with your church to create more of this, more space for people to be open and honest with how they're actually feeling, because so often people live in shame. And the other thing that these wellbeing groups focus on is making sure people aren't isolated and lonely. I'm like 2 days in, or 2 days, I've got 2 days left of doing self-isolation, and I can honestly say that just 10 days of being isolated is enough. And I can't imagine the fact that people have spent months pre-COVID alone, particularly the elderly. My heart goes out to people that are lonely. And so these wellbeing groups create these spaces for people who are maybe isolated or lonely or struggling with their mental and emotional well-being. So anyway, that's enough from us. But if you would like to know more, then please go on the website. That's a great place to find out about events, about merchandise, and also the wellbeing groups. But it's been so lovely to be with you this evening. And we just send you love from all of the Kintsugi Hope team.
Yeah, goodbye guys, take care.
Worst enemy.
I don't feel right in the daylight, spending all my nights on the dark side. Somebody help me find a way to get back home. I could cave in, but I'm waiting, holding on to it like that's fading, trying to find a place for all these ghosts I know. 'Cause the night feels long and my heart gets colder. Day by day I break away. I don't feel me folder. I don't feel right in the daylight, spending all my nights on the dark side. Somebody help me find a way to get back home. I could cave in, but I'm waiting, holding on to it like that's fading, trying to find a place for all these ghosts I know. 'Cause the night feels long and my heart gets colder. Day by day I break away. I don't feel right in the daylight, spending all my nights on the dark side. Somebody help me find a way to get back home. That's waiting. Somebody help me find a way, help me find a way to get back home. That's waiting. Somebody help me find a way, help me find a way to get back home. We were driving on the freeway, our minds drifting another state, floating above all the planes. Oh, I was searching for you. I didn't know it'd be like that. You would notice me like that. When you fall right into it, when you set to silence, crashing into the deep end. Feeling better in the daylight, keep you up all through the night. No control and you don't mind We were counting down the weekdays, time with you has a halo. Nights are losing all of their taste, all of their taste.